Welcome to the Galacticast. My name is Kamala.
And this is Siri
of Yoga Galactica.
It's our mission to share as many healing modalities with you as possible,
so we can collectively grow, learn, heal, and be our optimal, upgraded selves. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this transmission. Hello, world.
Hello, hello.
Welcome to the Galacticast. My name's Kamala.
And I am Siri.
And today we're going to talk about Yoga Galactica, how we got started.
And really, what is Yoga Galactica?
Right. So let's start off on how we got started with yoga.
Sure.
All right. Well, for me, my mom did yoga when I was in her belly up until probably 9 months, right before I was born. And she has also done Tai Chi her entire life. And we grew up in Oregon. So rain, shine, snow, whatever it was, I would look outside and see my beautiful mom doing Tai Chi outside. And so I was always really curious about yoga. And I mean, when I got started in yoga, I was, 28 years old. And I did it because it was a cool thing to do. It was a big fad and everybody was doing it. And I thought, well, if everybody is doing this and getting results, I should try it out. And I was really dealing with a lot of migraines at the time. I didn't feel very focused in my life, and I wanted a way. I don't like gyms. I hate working out. So I wanted a way to get my body, mind, spirit in shape and without going to the gym. So I went to my first class. It was Stephen Earth's Power Yoga. I was like 10 minutes late to class, and I called my mom and I was like, oh my God, I'm in LA. There was traffic. Should I go to this class? And she's like, yes, Kamala, just go in. And I went in, and it was like, seriously, a bunch of fucking supermodels doing yoga. And I walked in and everybody was like, oh, hi. Like they recognized me or something. And I was like, oh my God, what is happening? So I went in, took the class. It was so friggin' hard. I was dripping with sweat. And it was actually really frustrating for me. But the next day, actually later on, I had that night I had some of the best sleep I'd had in a while. And the next day I was sore from the bottom of my toes to the top of my head. And so I was like, okay, I'll give this a try. Why not? So that was my first initial yoga class and start to yoga. What about you?
So I was born and raised in a Kundalini yoga community called, I was a Sikh. It's called the 3HO with Yogi Bhajan. And my parents, when they were in their 20s, they left New York to kind of get away from some of the craziness that was going on. It was the height of the psychedelic age, and a lot of their friends were using drugs and, losing their minds, really. It's not as much as the conscious psychedelic use that's emerging right now. So they moved out to California, and they lived up in Mendocino County. And there was one day that they saw this flyer for Kundalini yoga with a man in a turban, and they went and took the class and loved it and really kind of went really full bore. I know my dad was much more into it than my mom was. And so essentially, they really started practicing. They practiced more and more, and then they went to their first summer solstice. And that's a big collection of all these Kundalini yogis led by Yogi Bhajan. And they fell in love with it. They actually got married, and they married into the religion. So they converted to becoming Sikhs. And now that wasn't a requirement at the time, but that's just how they felt they neaded to progress.
Was it a real marriage, or was it just?
No, I believe it was a real marriage.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Like a spiritual marriage, but they were legitimately married.
Right.
Maybe they went and did the paperwork afterwards.
Okay.
And so when my sister and I were born, we were born into that religion, into Sikhism, really with the foundation of Kundalini yoga. And now, interestingly, as a child, I actually didn't do a lot of yoga, but I was in yoga classes all the time. My parents would wake up at 4 in the morning and they would do sadhana with the rest of the ashram, and they would lay down a sheepskin for me, and I would just sleep. And so a lot of that background just got infused into me without even really practicing that much. So my background really comes from a Kundalini base, and it wasn't until my late 20s that I was in Los Angeles and I fell upon Golden Bridge one day in the afternoon, and everything came flooding back. And I started working there. I did my teacher training there. It was really shortly after that that Kamala and I got together, and then we both did our teacher training there together. At this point, Kamala had already been doing yoga for at least 7+ years.
Yeah. Yeah. Really quick, were you born at the ashram?
Yes, I was born in the
Wow.
ashram, natural birth. My mom's a midwife, and actually, all of us were born in the ashram.
Wow.
So, yeah, really wild.
Huh. Yeah, so new. I didn't know that. Yeah, I did my first yoga teacher training at White Lotus Institute in Santa Barbara.
What year was that?
That was in 2003, 2002 or 2003 with Ganga and Tracy, Ganga White. And gosh, at that time of my life, I was actually really suffering. I'm a recovering alcoholic, and actually, I call it an alcoholic living my best life because that definitely is my poison. But I don't let that label own me or dictate my life at all. And I was going through a tough time, and I was trying to find myself, trying to figure out what I really wanted to do with my life. And I decided, well, why not teach yoga? And I I hadn't really even practiced a lot or done a lot of yoga, but I was really good at the poses. And I thought, well, why not, go do this teacher training and see what happens. So I went into a 27-day live-in yoga teacher training course at White Lotus in Santa Barbara. And it was one of the most challenging things I've ever done in my life. I was so tested, so tried. And right about that same time, I found fire dancing. Actually, it found me. It literally fell out of the sky onto our heads. I was producing really large events at the time. I had a company called Fusion Entertainment with my ex-boyfriend, and we had produced a huge show in Seattle, Washington called Ocean Afterglow. It was a complete failure. I lost a lot of money, but I saw fire dancing for the first time, and I was like, wow, that's amazing. It looks so beautiful. And the people that were doing it were so calm and so focused and just so alive. And so I saw it and I thought, oh my God, I could never do that in my life. Like, it looks just unbelievable and so hard. And so we found fire dancing, or saw fire dancing, and my sister and I were doing a gig called E3. It's a big gaming like convention. And my sister Hannah basically just stopped me, looked me in the eyes, grabbed my arms and said, oh my God, you know what we need to do? And I said, no, what? And she said, we need to dance with fire. And we immediately started spinning poi, which is poi is a name for a ball on the end of a chain, and it's an ancient tribal dancing tool, and it was brought to the States from the Maoris and Polynesians. And so anyway, we found fire dancing, but I didn't know where that was going to take me. And right about that time, I thought, well, why not go do a yoga teacher training? So I went and did this training. Like I said, it challenged me to my friggin' core. I remember calling my mom and my sister and just being like, what am I doing? Like, I don't think I can do this. This is crazy. I was really suffering with alcohol at the time, and I was trying to find myself. And actually, one of the last days of my teacher training, we all went down into Santa Barbara And my God, a couple of the girls and I just got totally wasted. And yeah, and one of our last days at White Lotus Institute, we were just drunk and sloppy. And I was starting to realize at that time that alcohol was like not my friend, and that I needed to really find myself, but I didn't know how to do that. Everybody kept saying, Kamala, you're so strong, you know, just let it go. You can do this. And I couldn't. And I was struggling to find myself. And so I finished my teacher training, and literally 2 days after my teacher training, I went up and took a class at Runyon Canyon. And Runyon Canyon is a beautiful place in Hollywood, outdoor yoga. And this man, Steve, was teaching the class, and it was a wild class. I mean, he is he's like a kind of a militant yogi, and I love you, Steve, but very, very like, you know, structured and like, you know, he would clap his hands, downward dog, upward dog, you know, and really like, I was like, wow, this class is, and I was kind of laughing, but I was like, okay, this is really cool. You like, we're outside, beautiful park in the middle of Hollywood. And there was probably about like maybe 20 people at the time. And I finished the class and I went up to Steve and I was like, that was great. I was like, it was fun. It was funny. I got a great workout. And I was like, how did you get started teaching these classes? And he was like, oh, I just came up and started teaching these classes. And he was like, well, how would you like to come and teach up here? And I was like, yeah, I just finished my teacher training. And he's like, all right, well, why don't you take Monday through Friday? I was like, holy shit. Yeah, exactly. I was like, okay. So I went home. I went home to my sister and I was like, oh my God, this guy just asked me to teach yoga up at Runyon Canyon 5 days a week. I was like, do you want to teach with me? And she'd never even done a teacher training. And she was like, yeah. So this is Bodie. He's smelling the mic. So we took over Monday through Friday teaching up at Runyon Canyon. Really had never taught a class in my life, but we just went for it. And believe it or not, I taught at Runyon Canyon for 17 years of my life. It's the longest I've really done anything in my life as far as a job goes. And 7 years into teaching, I met Siri. And we kind of met through Runyon Canyon Yoga in a way. We absolutely met through Runyon Canyon. We met on Facebook, and I kind of stalked him, and we ended up meeting on Facebook, and really within, I think, maybe a week or two of our relationship, maybe, right? Or a month. I don't know how long it was.
I don't know what you're going to say.
I asked you to come teach with me.
It was a little longer,
Okay.
3 months.
3 months. So basically, Hannah and I were teaching at that time Monday through Thursday. I was teaching Tuesday, Thursday. Hannah was teaching Monday and Wednesday. And Hannah got pregnant and has had a beautiful child. And so I said, I thought I didn't want to teach alone. So I asked Siri if he would want to come teach with me. And Siri had never really taught yoga, but since he's steeped in Kundalini yoga, he thought, okay, well, why not? So he did the same thing I did and pretty much very quickly said yes and came up and started teaching with me at Running Canyon Yoga.
And I have a little different perspective of how that story went.
Well, tell
but
it.
I'll share it. While I was working at Golden Bridge, somebody told me, they said, you know, there's free yoga in the park at Runyon, or donation-based yoga. And so
yes.
I started going there. And actually, Yogi Daniel, shout out to you, was my first teacher up there. And then Yogi Steve was another one of the teachers I was going to. And I lived only like 4 or 5 blocks from Runyon Canyon. So I was going there all the time. And it was actually a really big part of my development as a yogi, as well as a yoga instructor. Interestingly, I made it a goal to try to take every single person's class up there that I could. And so I took Hannah's class, I took Yogi Steve, Yogi Daniel. There were a couple other yogis that were doing the evening classes. And every time that I tried to take Kamala's class, she had a sub. And so I never actually met her up at Runyon,
No.
but just through association, you know how on Facebook they say people you may know, she popped up. And actually Hannah used to always talk about her sister and how they would do these spin jams. And I was always very curious, but I never quite just went to one of the spin jams. And so it was actually like in a summer, and I found Kamala's profile and I just clicked add friend. And at that time, I was in a relationship. And so that's all it really was. We just became Facebook friends. We were Facebook friends for probably 6 months or so.
Yeah.
And then fast forward to pretty much New Year's 2010.
Yeah.
Is when
January 4th.
Yeah, is when Kamala actually reached out, and at that point I was not in a relationship anymore, and we just kind of sparked this little romance on Facebook. She was
Stalked you.
I didn't know she stalked me.
I did.
But we started talking, then we exchanged numbers, and then we started texting and calling, and then literally we made a date. It was like a Monday, and we made a date for a Saturday, like let's have dinner. And we were texting so much through the week. I was recording an album at the time, that she was like, hey, do you want to just come over and meet me or something like that? And I was in the studio in Van Nuys, and I was like, sure, I'll just come on over. And so this was like Monday or Tuesday, probably a Tuesday actually.
Yeah.
And every night that week we really hit it off, and every night that week we got together. And then fast forward to that Saturday is when we actually had our date, and I invited her over to my house and I cooked her dinner, and all of my roommates were there. Shout out to the G Squad, Teddy, Woo! Jarrett, Ian. And she came over and we had dinner. We all connected, and I'll let you fill in some of the details about that.
Yes, well, that was amazing. Meeting Siri changed my entire life, and it wasn't just Siri. It was this beautiful community of men, this tribe of men, the G Squad, that he surrounded himself with, and so there you go, sweetie. So one thing I want to touch on is that Siri was talking about Spin Jam. At the same time that I started teaching yoga, after I left White Lotus Institute and started teaching up at Running Canyon, my sister and I, fire dancing took my whole life over. And it was absolutely beautiful. I am so, so grateful for everything that fire dancing brought into my life, because it's really a lot of, it has so much to do with what we offer now and what we do. And a big part of that is community. Community is so important. So with fire dancing, about 4 months after Hannah and I started teaching, we got hired to dance at a friend's party, and I think we made like $150, and we were like, oh my God, we're making money for fire dancing. This is amazing. And we did one show, and probably 6 months into Dancing with Fire, people started asking us, well, do you want to teach? Can you teach us how to dance with fire? And we thought, well, why not? So we started teaching people how to dance with fire almost 6 months after we started. And we ran the largest fire dancing school in the US, if not the world, for 16 years of my life. It like took off, and we started booking huge jobs with some of the largest party producers in LA. We started this thing called Spin Jam, that was a community gathering where we had this beautiful space, and people would come and we would flow. We had a DJ, we would use poi and stabs and hula hoops and all kinds of stuff, and we would just dance. So Spin Jam, that's what Siri was talking about. Spin Jam was this beautiful community gathering of all kinds of people that were learning how to dance with fire. And we would also, we eventually started doing yoga before Spin Jam. And I think that's when we met. We were teaching yoga right before Spin Jam. Is that? Do you remember?
Yeah, I thought
Maybe.
Yogi Daniel was teaching the yoga at that point
Oh yeah,
before
he
Spin
might
Jam.
have been.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we would do yoga and then we would go into Spin Jam. And so yoga and just yoga flowed into Spin Jam, but it was really this communal, this beautiful community space that we created. And so fast forward, gosh, I guess like 7 years later, Siri asked to be my friend on Facebook, and and I was like, oh, that guy's hot, so I added him, and I saw that he was friends with Yogi Daniel, Yogi Steve, Hannah, like all the yogis up at Renyon. And it was January, New Year's Eve, 2008. I was doing a gig. I blew my ACL out, and I was laid up on the couch. And a really dear friend of ours, John Vital, had told me to keep my mind open because I was about to meet the most amazing man ever. And I was like, oh God, I doubt that, because I'd been single for a while. I also went into rehab in 2009, 2008, May 15th, 2008, and let go of alcohol. And so I had a year and a half sober, of sobriety, and I wasn't supposed to date. I wasn't supposed to really see anybody for a year. So I had a whole year of being sober, actually a year and a half of being sober, of not seeing anyone, of really focusing in on myself. And I had dated, and I'd met just complete jerks at the time. I was like not meeting the right men at all. And so I hurt my knee. I'm laid up on the couch. I get this message from John, who's like, keep your mind open. You're going to meet this amazing man. And I was just like, oh my God, I'm not going to meet anyone. I'm going to be single for the rest of my life. And I see Siri pop up. Like, Facebook used to have like these 4 people that you should get to know better or something. I can't remember what it was, but I was like laying on my couch. It was January 4th, I believe. And there's Siri's face, and I click on him, and he's single. And I was like, oh, this guy's good looking and seems to know all of my friends. And so I started literally stalking him and going on all these journeys through Europe with him and this beautiful girl who turned out to be his sister Suki. And after a couple hours, I was like, okay, I'm just going to reach out to this guy. And I did. And I was like, hi, my name's Kamala. You look like such an amazing man, and I love all the travels that you do and everything you're doing in your life. And I teach yoga at Running Canyon. And is there any way you'd like to have dinner with me or meet up? And he got back to me within a couple hours. And so basically that is, Siri already filled you in on the rest, but that's how we met. And he was full on immersed in Golden Bridge when I met him. He was working at their cafe, I believe, and doing yoga all the time. And he started coming up to Runyon with me. And it was right about that time that my sister got pregnant, like maybe 2 months after we met, 2 or 3 months. And I didn't really want to teach up there alone. So I asked Siri if he would join me. And when we first started teaching up at Runyon, we would go back and forth. No, we didn't.
Yeah, actually, the way I remember it is it was in March of 2010. And I remember we went to Fuente, which is a micro festival down in Mexico, and it's unbelievable. It's called
so much fun.
It's now called Leyenda, but at the time it was Fuente Eterno, and I was so against going to this festival because I wasn't really drinking or using any substances.
Neither of us were, yeah.
And the video that I saw about it, like the promo video for Fuente, was like people all dressed up in tutus and hats and wigs, and they looked kind of drunk or partying, and I was like, I do not want to go to this. But somehow, she got us tickets and she convinced me to go. I was like, kind of just didn't want to go.
Well, I said you could bring I said you can bring 2 of your best friends.
Yes. So
that's how I got him to go.
Teddy and Jarrett, and we literally had the most transformational experience ever. It literally cracked me wide open, and I came back, and I felt changed. And it was right after that, I remember Kamala said, "Hey, why don't you come up to Runyon Canyon and you can do some like Kundalini stuff, because you know that really well, and then I'll do some Hatha." So really, how we started how we started teaching together, because actually Yoga Galactica wasn't born for another like 6 or 7 years
No.
after that, was we would teach up at Runyon, and I would go and offer about 20 to 30 minutes of Kundalini breath
Oh,
work
yeah.
and warm ups and just very simple stuff to activate the energies up and down the spine. And then Kamala would teach sort of like the second half, or the second 2/3 of the class. So
Yes.
it was very much like I would start the class and then she would take over. And that's how it was actually for quite some time.
Yeah, for a couple years, I
Yeah.
think.
Or until, I think actually once we did our teacher training and finished our teacher training, which was in April 2011.
2000. Oh, I thought it was 2010.
Well, we started in October of 2010,
2010
and it
and
went
went
for like 7 or 8 months. And it was like right around when we finished our teacher training that we really started both teaching
Yes.
the Kundalini yoga and then both teaching the Hatha. And literally, we have never once planned out a yoga class.
Ever.
We've kind of talked a little bit about a flow and how we think the arc of the class should go, but we've never been like, all right, you're going to teach this and I'm going to teach this. And what we really did was we asked Spirit to really guide us and work through us to offer the best experience possible.
Yes.
And so the only thing that we did is we said, all right, you're going to teach 2 exercises and then I'm going to teach 2 exercises. And then we're just going to go back and forth. And
Right.
literally that's what we did for 5 years almost up at Running Canyon.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. And wow, it was pretty wild too, because here we are teaching and sorting out our relationship. And I have to say that when Siri decided to do his teacher training at Golden Bridge, Guru Mukh, who is one of the founders of Golden Bridge, we basically had this moment. She was like, "You need to do the teacher training." Siri had already decided to go. And I basically came to him and I was like, "I'm going to do the teacher training at Golden Bridge." And Siri was not happy with me. He was pissed. And I was like, "Okay, well, I'm going." And boy, that first little bit of us going, like, I don't even think we were talking.
No, that first weekend. Yeah, it was really interesting because the start of our relationship was very, let's just say, casual. Even though we
Yes.
spent a lot of time together,
We kept it light.
We kept it very light. We didn't put any labels on our relationship. And actually, it was fun, but it was also a little rocky in the beginning.
Oh,
And
yeah.
we were going through a moment right when the teacher training started. And it was a journey that I wanted to go on, and I was actually excited to kind of go on it alone, even though there was like 100 people in the teacher training. So when Kamala decided to do it, I was like, "Are you infiltrating like my experience right now?" And
Yeah.
I just thought like she wasn't giving me the space to do what I wanted to do, which is in a way like selfish of me. I could have gotten out of my head and out of my own way and been like, "Oh yeah, this is going to be great for both of us." So yeah, that first weekend, like we actually barely even talked to each
Oh,
other.
yeah,
which was
because I was
so
like, I can't
wild.
believe that this guy thinks that he can run my life and tell me that I can't do this teacher training, which Guru Mukh had been like, "You need to do this." And I was like, fully in my heart and soul going, "I need to do this. It doesn't have anything to do with you. It has to do with me." But Siri, for some reason at that point, was like full on thinking that this had to do with him and his journey and that I wanted to be there, or that, yeah, it was really interesting. So
So she did the teacher training.
Yeah.
And the first weekend was interesting, but we actually had a good breakthrough. And we were both super on board with it from then on. And, if any of you guys have done the Kundalini yoga teacher training, you know that it's not just like a few weekends. They
No.
stretch it out over the course of about 8 or 9 months, and they do like an immersion weekend. And so you're doing sadhana in the mornings at 4 in the morning. You're doing 8 to 10 hours of instruction and learning, and then more yoga, and you're doing like 90-minute exercises, and it's really intense. It's like a
really
deep dive.
intense.
And
It actually was really hard for me, to be honest.
Yeah,
It turned me off from doing yoga
it brought up a lot.
for a while. Yeah, it did.
And so it's really interesting because in Kundalini yoga, it's Kundalini yoga as taught by Yogi Bhajan. And maybe you know this, maybe you don't, but a lot of the kriyas, which are like the sets that are taught, they're oftentimes taught out of a book or sometimes they're memorized. And he's very specific to not stray from the kriya and not do your own thing, but
Right.
follow it to a T. The only thing you can really change up is the warm up exercises. So you can kind of do your own warm up exercises and varying the times. So in the books they would say, okay, do this stretch pose for 9 minutes, but you could
or
lower
11
that.
minutes.
Yeah. But you could, adjust the times a little bit according to that. And that was really like the only kind of flexible room that you had for teaching these kriyas. And while like we loved Kundalini yoga and we loved sort of
amazing.
The depth, like it works on your physical, emotional, spiritual, like
all of it.
It's really deep, where a lot of sort of asana based or vinyasa based yoga is very just like physical, and it's working on alignment, and there's nothing wrong with that, but Kundalini yoga takes you like much deeper. And so
every single kriya you're doing to attain a very specific result. So there is kriyas for, different chakras. There's kriyas for the lower back. There's kriyas for, literally everything. There's thousands of kriyas.
Thousands.
And we love them. They work. But it was really interesting because we were really excited about Kundalini yoga, and we were actually taking it and teaching it up at Runyon Canyon. And I ended up in a class saying, yeah, we love this. We're doing Kundalini yoga up at Runyon Canyon, but we're kind of merging it in with Hatha yoga, and we're creating our own style. And one of the instructors at Golden Bridge was like, you can't do that. And that was really interesting because, when somebody says straight up, you can't do that to me, I question it, everything about it. I'm like, well, why? And this person said, well, you're going to hurt people. Mm-hmm. And I thought, you remember that? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I thought, well, that's just, how do you know? Like, it seems to really be giving people these amazing breakthroughs, and like, you should be up there and see what's happening. Like, it's unbelievable. But I was really pretty much silenced, and she was like, you cannot do that. I was like, that's really interesting. And there was a lot in that teacher training that challenged me personally, because there were all these little things that were like, you cannot do this, you cannot do that, this is the way you do things, even down to the point of like, it just frustrated me. That's all I'm going to say. It got under my skin. And
it's very rigid.
Yes.
There's not a lot of flexibility. There's no openness for
for change. Yeah. For creating something new, for something to evolve. Put it that way. It's like, this is the way it is, this is the way it's always been, and this is the way that it's going to be. And as we know, as human beings, we evolve. We shift, we change. We are not the Sikhs that lived back in the 1800s, and we're in a very different time right now, and so we thought, well, why not evolve and merge these two styles of yoga? And that was just the beginning. Like, Yoga Galactica now is a combination of so many different things. It's unbelievable.
So what we did was, in Kundalini yoga, to start your set, you have to tune in with the Adi mantra, which is beautiful. It connects
Gorgeous.
You to your source. It's honoring the divine. And you have to do every single exercise in sequence. And if you don't do that, then you're kind of going against the grain, and you're not doing, the kriyas. So essentially what we did was, we're like, you know what? Okay, then this is what we're going to do. We're actually not going to teach Kundalini yoga as taught by Yogi Bhajan. But what we are going to do is take the exercises that are so powerful, the breath work that is so powerful, and we're going to fuse it with this other hatha yoga and create something different. And it's not like, I love Kundalini yoga. It's
Oh
my
my
roots
God.
and I honor
It's
it. And
amazing.
there's actually something really beautiful about the discipline. And, you know, just to touch on that, when Yogi Bhajan came here in 1969, people were losing their minds. They were, you know, on drugs, on psychedelics. It was post, you know, Vietnam War, and it was really like an intense time. And so a lot of that rigidity was needed and it was necessary. And, you know, so, and then when he passed, he just said, it's going to stay like this forever. And you know what? Bless it. I bless it. People need that.
For sure. And it
And
changed our lives
yeah.
in good and interesting ways.
And you know, so we were a little bit of rebels. We kind of went against the grain, and we just started really fusing and making our own thing. And still at this point, it was the two modalities. It was Kundalini yoga and hatha, and a blend.
Yes.
And that's what we did. And we taught that for like 5+ years. Fast forward to the Fire Groove had a new studio, and we had been doing spin jams there still weekly, but we didn't have yoga before it.
Well, we did with Yogi Daniel, but we didn't teach.
Not at the new studio.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, so at the new studio, which was on Berendo, we're still doing the spin jams, but we weren't doing the yoga. And Kamala said, why don't we start doing yoga before spin jams?
Yes.
And I was like, yeah, let's do that. We're already doing our weekly, you know, I think we were doing 2 to 3 times a week at Runyon. It was definitely Tuesday and Thursday, but I think for a while
we were doing Wednesday also.
Yeah, Wednesday also. And so then we added that class Tuesday evening before the spin jam, and that was really the birth of Yoga Galactica.
Yeah.
And
we called it Yummy Yoga.
Yeah, we just called it Yummy Yoga. We had guest musicians come in and play. Robbie Fitzsimmons, you were actually a big part of that.
Uru.
Yeah.
Daniel.
Exactly. Daniel Pritchett.
No, Daniel. Uru Magic.
Daniello.
Yeah. Yes.
We had Joshua Comer. He was playing sitar with us. Yep. Even Daniel Pritchett came, and we're just, you know, it was all very organic. Again, like none of it was planned. It just all grew very organically. And I remember it was one yoga experience where we had Robbie Fitzsimmons play. You know, we had dim lighting, we were projecting stars, it was very like ethereal, out of this world, and the way Robbie was playing, it felt like we were like flying in the cosmos. It was like very echoey, reverby, playing, and beautiful haunting vocals. And at that moment we were like, oh wow, this is galactic. This is amazing. And we actually switched it from Yummy Yoga to Yummy Yoga Galactica. And we called it that for maybe a few months. And then finally at one point we're just like, let's just call it Yoga Galactica. Let's just do that. And I remember it was not too long, maybe 6 months, 8 months. Kamala went and purchased her first set of crystal bowls. And that's when we started playing music really evolved. And backing up one step, I remember when Joshua was playing with us in his sitar, he would oftentimes have a drummer come. And one time he didn't have a drummer, but he still brought his drum, and he was like, why don't you just drum with me? So when Kamala was teaching, I would do some drumming with Joshua. And then so at one point after Kamala got her bowls and she was doing crystal bowls, I would still do a little drumming, even without Josh or any other players. I'd just do a little drumming, you know, not a lot, but just while she was teaching. And then,
well, right when I got my bowls, because I didn't tell Siri. I basically got this message from Spirit that was like, you need to play crystal bowls, and I was like, okay, you know, I need to play crystal bowls, and so I just ordered them. I ordered my crystal bowls. I didn't know what I was doing. And they showed up, and right when they showed up, Siri was like, oh, I've been thinking about getting a gong.
Yeah, I was like,
He had his eyes on this gong.
was like, you can't just up your game, and I'm not going
Yeah.
to up my game. So I knew I wanted a gong for a long time because in Kundalini yoga, they do a gong
Oh,
sound
yeah.
bath at the end of every class. And
Yes.
if you've ever experienced the
So
gong,
beautiful.
it is otherworldly. It deeply resonates with your cells. And so for years, I wanted
Beautiful.
one, but if you guys know, they're not cheap. And so when Kamala got her
None of these
bowls,
ancient instruments are
yeah,
cheap. They're like, I mean, it's an investment. But the thing is that it was an investment into this thing that we were creating, and we really didn't even know what we were creating at the time. We were just like, okay, like spirit says to get this, let's get this, let's do that. And we were kind of just going, like literally flowing, which felt really good to me because it was a very organic build of this beautiful creation that we have now. You know, Siri got his gong, and then I ended up getting something else. I think it was, I don't know what it was, like a dragon drum, no.
yeah, we really rocked the gong
And
and the
bowls for a
bowls for a
while.
long time.
Oh, the chimes came in.
Yeah, we got some
We got the
chimes with,
chimes, and then we got the rain stick, and then then we sat with
yeah,
ayahuasca.
this actually like blew open our practice, and
Yes.
we don't have to get deep into that right now, but it rekindled my connection with music because I was doing singer songwriter stuff for many years, and that's actually. When I moved to LA, I really pursued that. I recorded an album. It was such a challenging process that it actually left me broken, and I didn't even pick up my guitar for like 5 years.
Mm-mm.
And after sitting with Aya, it like cracked me open and made me remember why I loved music and why I loved playing. And so I literally started picking up my guitar. I started learning all these medicine songs from the jungle and from South America. It opened up Kamala's voice. She
Oh
found her
yeah, I
voice
found my
in.
voice in an ayahuasca ceremony, in the first ayahuasca ceremony that I've ever done, and it was basically like, here's your voice, and you don't have to sing for anybody. It's not about you performing or gaining fame or fortune, whatever. It's about you connecting to your voice and singing for spirit. And I'd never thought about that. Just offering my voice as a gift to spirit, as almost like a way, like just a way of bowing to spirit and on giving a sacred offering. And I promised myself from that moment on to never stop singing again. And I love singing. It's terrifying. Every time I'm about to sing into my drum, I'm just like, oh my God, don't let my voice crack. And sometimes it does. And that's okay because it is a sacred offering from my soul to the class, to spirit, and I just let it flow. And it feels very safe. I love singing. It's changed my life. So,
So our yoga classes, that was in 2016,
yeah.
took like a radical leap at that moment, and they became very ceremonial,
Yes.
like a ceremony of self. We got frame drums. We studied with Miranda Rondow,
Yeah.
our frame drum instructor. We got a buffalo drum that has this deep haunting drum. Like Kamala said, we're bringing in shakers and rain sticks and chimes, and then I actually got the nerve to start playing guitar
Yes.
and singing during class. And all of this was happening while I actually learned how to play didgeridoo. And
Oh my
it
God.
was so funny because,
And make didgeridoo.
yeah, for many years, over the course of like a few years, I had picked up the didge a few times and it just was so foreign to me. It didn't come naturally. I
No.
didn't know what I was doing. I couldn't make a note or a sound from it. And then we had our friend Josh, and at the time, Josh and Jamila were dating, and they came over and we set up this whole room and we did the sound bath, and Josh
Yes.
brought over his didgeridoo, and he was in the beginning phases of his didge, but at least he could play it. And I was like, you know what? If he can play it, I can play it.
Yeah.
And I remember I had this little plastic didgeridoo that somebody gave us. And for like 3 days or a week after that, both Kamala and I sat out in our backyard and for hours. We're
Playing.
just practicing the ditch, practicing and playing. And she would learn a new thing of how to put your voice into it,
I
and
was
it
learning some
inspired
cool
me.
stuff
Yeah,
back
no,
then. I was
dude,
ooh,
we
ooh,
were
ooh,
we
I
were
was like making
together.
these sounds and
Yeah.
stuff.
And then I watched a video about how to do the circular breathing, and I got that. And then I started playing didgeridoo in class, and I would play didge, and I would drum and play didge. And then we started adding the didge in the sound bath. And so, every little thing that what Yoga Galactica is now all just happened very organically. And, we really, like, we cherry pick from all of these modalities, from ancient, let's just say, ceremony to Kundalini to hatha to sound.
Well, one of the big things that you forgot to mention was
Wim Hof.
after Wim Hof.
Yes.
Right after we sat with Aya, we were listening to Joe Rogan, who's one of our absolute favorite human beings. He has inspired us more than I can ever imagine through his podcast, and introduced us to a virtual plethora of the most inspirational beings. If you don't listen to Joe Rogan, we'll give him a shout out now.
Shout out to Joe Rogan.
Listen to his podcast. It will inspire you. It will allow you to meet so many people that you've probably never heard of in your life, and really expand your mind. And one of those beautiful beings that he had on his podcast was Wim Hof. And the Wim Hof breath technique has changed our lives in ways that I didn't even know possible.
Yeah, if there's one single tool to have in your tool belt, which, give yourself more than one.
For sure, a starter kit.
We would definitely say is the Wim Hof breath.
Yes.
And the way that happened was, sorry to take over. I was driving in my car one day listening to this podcast, and actually it was one of the first one that I listened to. And I remember seeing it said Wim Hof, Iceman. And years ago, I'd heard about Wim Hof. I saw a TED Talk where he was submerged in ice, and he was like, it's all in the mind. And I was like, okay, whatever, that's great. He's got this thing down. I don't even remember him talking about the breath on that TED Talk. But when I was listening to Joe Rogan and him, he was like, it's the mind, but it all starts with this breath. You got to do this breath. And Joe Rogan was like, let's do it. Let's do the breath. And I remember I was driving at the time. God. So I pulled over my car and I literally did the breath with them. Wim Hof was leading Joe Rogan. Yeah, I pulled over. I knew not to do breath work while I was driving, because I already tried that one time and it didn't work out well. And that's do not do breath work while you're driving. Yes, do it while you're seated in a comfortable place, maybe even lying down.
Yes.
So I pulled my car over. I did it with them. And I had the most transformational experience in literally 2 minutes. Like, that's all it takes for one round, like 2 minutes. And so I rushed home and I said, Kamala, I just listened to the most inspirational podcast.
And I was out in our garage playing my crystal bowls. And he's like, you got to try this right now. And I was like, oh, what? I
was like, okay. Trust me, let's just do it.
Let's do it. And so he leads me through this breath work. And by this time, I've sat with ayahuasca, 5-MeO-DMT, definitely have dabbled with psilocybin and LSD and some major hallucinogenics, major psychedelics. And so he's like, try this breath work. And so I'm doing it. I finish it. I inhale. I hold for a second. I exhale the breath. I'm holding out, and tears start streaming down my face. And I was just like, oh my God, like the amount of emotions that I felt and the amount of gratitude. And I was like, and then I inhale, and you're holding the breath in, and like tears are just flowing. Like I'm barely able to hold. And I finish, and I was like, oh my God, it's right here. It's always been inside this whole time. And I was just completely overwhelmed with emotion. And I was like, and the experience for me was so psychedelic. I remember seeing the head of this horse. Like I remember seeing these things in this 2-minute journey with breath. And I said, we need to teach this immediately. Like literally, we need to study this guy.
Our next class, we were teaching Wim Hof breath.
And we're so grateful for you, Wim.
Thank you, Wim.
God. I mean, you're literally changing the world, and you have changed our lives, and you are changing so many people's lives. And it's literally innovators like you that break the mold and that do things that no one else would think of doing. Create your own thing you are changing the world. So we thank you. We honor you.
Yes.
And yeah, so we started incorporating this Wim Hof breath into our yoga class, literally at starting it. We do it every single class. I don't think we've ever, well, sometimes
we switch it up
then we
and
started learning about other types of breath
do
work too.
holotropic breath,
Yes.
shamanic 3-part breathing.
Yes.
So we switch it up, but I would say 95% of our classes, we do the Wim Hof breath
98.
just because of how powerful and effective it is. And then every once in a while, we'll do like a little holotropic breathing.
Yes.
We always do Kundalini breath work. So we're always doing long, deep breathing, breath of fire, alternate nostril breathing, even Satali Pranayam, where you curl your tongue. I mean,
breath work
cool
is
the body.
The core of what we do now.
Exactly.
Because we realized there were so many times for me with Hatha yoga, I wouldn't even breathe. I would be like almost competing with myself or whoever was there, like holding this pose. And so many times my mind would wander. And I was like, God, I know that yoga is the mind, the body, and the breath, but I wasn't really feeling that connection. And Kundalini brought me closer to that connection because Kundalini is so much, has so much to do with the breath. But then learning like the power of breath work with Wim Hof, we were like, okay, breath work is the core. So literally every single thing we're doing, we're reminding you to breathe. We're breathing. We're focusing on the breath because it is transformational. It is really like the glue that holds everything together, in our classes.
Yeah. So now really our classes are a fusion of all these different modalities that we've learned. And the amazing thing is that we're constantly learning more from other teachers and biohackers. So really, Yoga Galactica is a ever-evolving, ever-changing experience. Of course, it's rooted in the breath work, rooted in Kundalini yoga, rooted in sound because of how effective sound is. We always finish each class with at least a 10-minute deep sound bath of didgeridoo, crystal bowls, chimes, gong, and so there is a little bit of a pattern of our class, but if we go and do a transformational weekend or let's say an ecstatic dance and something calls us or
we're bringing that in.
We bring it right in. And so every class that we teach is different, and we never have a set guideline or itinerary of what we're going to do, and we're constantly calling in and asking spirit to guide us.
Yes.
And so every class is different, and that's why, because we're different. Always, every time we come to our mat, we're in a different place. We're in a different time and space. So, it's really beautiful. And we just say, have no expectations of yourself. Just come with an open heart, an open mind. People are often crying from class. They're releasing emotionally. We do a lot of verbal vocal releases. Oftentimes we're chanting. We do a little chant to really help open up the chakras. And now Kamala even pulls cards before class, whether it's the unicorn deck or native spirit,
whatever card, or whatever's happening in this day and age that needs to be talked about. And right now we're filming this in the Space Shift. And the Space Shift is a studio that is at our house. And this used to be, it was basically, I've lived in this house for 17 years. Siri's been here for the last 9 years. And so we've had so many people live in this room. It's been through so many different epochs and so we had roommates here, and then we had a Moroccan Airbnb that happened back here. And it was about 2 years ago, I was getting a massage, and boom, I got this message. We need to turn this back house into a ceremony space and into a yoga studio. The next day, a friend of ours was like, oh my God, I need a place for a party. Where should we do it? And we were like, let's do it here. So we gutted this place, took everything out of it, put in this really thick padded floor. It's like 1.5 inches of thick padded floor. And we do ceremony here. We do Kambo. We do yoga. We do psychedelic integration. We do dream circles. We do ecstatic dance. It is a community space. And wrapping, I think you remember earlier in the podcast, maybe, when I was talking about the importance of community. This is a space for community. The community that we've built here is one of the biggest blessings I think that Yoga Galactica has given us, and we treasure our community. And the thing about the Space Shift that's so special is that it's a very safe space. So whatever happens in the space shift stays in the space shift. And if you need to come here and cry, if you need to come here and go crazy with your whatever you need to do, this is a space for you to do it. We turn the lights down very, very low, so it's not a super bright yoga class. If you're having a hard time and you just need to sit and let the sound and people's breath and everything just kind of soothe you, you can do that. And so we teach in here every Tuesday and Thursday night, and beforehand we have community time. This is a cannabis-friendly yoga class, so if you choose to imbibe with cannabis, you can do that. We make amazing organic chocolates. We make tea. We make amazing tea. Blue butterfly pea flower tea mixed with a whole bunch of different other types of teas, and it's a community space. This class is constantly evolving. I don't think it will ever stop evolving, because the more we learn, the more we share. And that is so important, because there's so many innovators right now coming out with new things every single day. And the more that we learn that shifts and changes our lives, the more we're going to share. That's part of our mission. Share what has shifted us.
So look, we could talk about it. We could tell you how great it is. People have told us that our class is life-changing, and that's an honor. But the best way to do it is experience it for yourselves and join us. So if you're remote and you're listening from afar or watching this from around the world, we have a bunch of classes on our YouTube page that you can experience. We also record the audio to all of our classes. So you can literally turn on the audio, turn your lights low wherever you're at in your home or house, bedroom, and you can follow along with us. You actually don't even need to see what we're doing, because we guide you with our voices.
It's actually easier not even to look, just to listen.
But of course, nothing replaces being here with us, with a group of people doing it together. So you guys, everyone's invited. All of our classes are donation-based, they're contribution-based, so no one is ever turned away due to lack of funds.
Ever.
And so they're available to everyone. And really, just come join us. We love to have new people. We love to do all of this together. And it really is an honor and a pleasure. And it is our mission, our goal, to share as much as we've learned with you guys. So join us soon.
Yes. And really quick about the donations, when we started doing yoga, when I started way back in early 2000, yoga was such a big trend. And one of the things that we noticed was that yoga studios were charging so much for each class. And that's why Runyon Canyon was so important, was that you have this amazing class. And our class got up to like 150 people, 122, I'll be honest. 122 people was the largest class that we ever had. And it was all donation based. And that was something that was like so dear to my heart personally, was like offering yoga to everyone, no matter what, because, you have to find that flow of abundance within yourself. Once you find it, then you flow with it. But until you do, everyone should be able to take yoga, to be able to have access to these classes. And so that was something Siri really felt strongly about, as well as like making sure that our classes were available to everyone, no matter what. So no matter where you are financially, you will find your flow of abundance. I guarantee you that. You just got to drop in and realize how abundant we truly are. But come take our class and check it out, and we would be so honored and so grateful to have you here. And every Tuesday, Thursday night, 7 p.m. We start at 7:30. But come and be part of the community.
Because we actually have limited space in the space shift, we have a special way to sign up. You can find it on our schedule on our website, but it's also www.yogagalactica.as.me, and we have our sign up there to reserve your spot. There is a prompt for a deposit to secure it because of limited space. We want the deposit. What that does is it just confirms that you're going to be here, because what we used to do is just say, sign up, come, but then we'd have no shows, but we'd have a list of people wanting to come and they couldn't come because the person no showed. And so we ask for a deposit, but if you need to, we have a code that you can use, and then you can come and bypass the payment.
So
That's
just
not a problem.
reach out to us and we'll
Yeah.
give you that code.
And we love you guys. I think we're going to wrap this up here. We talked for a while.
Yeah, we did.
You know, we're going to be doing more of these podcasts. So send us questions. If you guys ever have questions or topics that you want us to talk about or anything, we're here for you guys. We're going to be doing this at least once a week, if not a couple times a week. We'll do it together. We'll probably do some solo podcasts. And
so let us know what you want to hear about, and we will talk about it.
Or if there's any special guests that you want, you know, we can talk together, but we're probably at some point we'll have some guests on talking about their amazing modalities.
Oh, one thing I forgot that's so special about our yoga classes, we have puppies.
Yes.
Our dogs actually sit in our yoga classes and meditate throughout the entire class. Bodhi, come here.
Buddha's making a cameo. Bodhi's a little tired.
Hi, Duba. This is Buddha. Buddha is one of our rescue dogs from Barkin' Bitches.
Hi.
Barkin' Bitches is an amazing rescue place in LA. If you're looking for a pup, go see them at Barkin' Bitches. They have amazing animals. We have 3 dogs from them now. But these little special beings sit in class with us. They meditate. Here comes Bella, Galactica Sparkle Bear. Hi, Belle. And after class you get to pet these puppies, and before class you get to bond with them, so you get this beautiful animal healing, which is so necessary. Animals are such sacred teachers. So just wanted to give them a shout out. We love you.
We love you guys.
We look forward to hearing from you and seeing you in our classes. And remember to just live today the fullest way you can. Do your best, be kind to other human beings, and really put yourself first so that you have something to offer and something to give. Yes. We love you.
We love you.
We can't wait to physically see you.
We would also appreciate it if you guys would share this, either on your page or social media. Click subscribe on our YouTube page. Maybe leave a review, you know, however you listen to this. And we love you guys so, so much.
Bodhi.
There's Bodhi, and we hope you have an amazing day. We love you.
We love you.
Bye.
Bye.